Hi, everyone, and welcome back to day 4 of our holiday event, 12 Days of Holiday Self-Care. I'm so excited to have Kristy with us today. Kristy is one of our therapists at our business, A Little Nutrition, and this topic I'm very interested in hearing all your wisdom on, and we're going to be talking about when sadness strikes. Over the holiday season, we hear a lot about joy and celebration and happiness, and often there's sadness that nobody really talks about. And if I have to be completely honest, Kristy, I think I might have put together this event to keep myself distracted from my own holiday sadness that might come up from time to time. And it's mostly related to the fact that I have a bit of a displaced family, and there's some sadness that's, tied into that with my kids not having 2 sets of grandparents that they can visit, and the memories of maybe the past, my own upbringing around Christmas, and not being able to reproduce that now with having my kids myself. So I was thinking about this event. I was like, I can put on a big fun event that will keep me busy and distracted over the holiday season and kind of keep my spirits up. So I don't know if distraction and keeping yourself busy is a positive health move or self-care move. And it's just always kind of worked for me. But I'm so curious to hear about maybe in your experience when you hear from clients when sadness arises, how do you, talk to them about it, and what are some of your strategies? Because I think you told me today we got 6 that we're going to dive into.
Yeah. So, as you talk about your strategies to deal and navigate that stress and distraction is good for you, and that's great that you know that. And so whatever works for everyone is what you'll pursue. So this is just meant to hopefully complement, some of the strategies already being used. And if there is, a lack of strategies in your life, hopefully this can help with maybe introducing some ideas and, again, using it in a way that you feel is right for you. And so I thought I'd bring in some 6 tips or some 6 strategies to just introduce to see if that can, again, serve as a, support to you as we go through this time and, the chaos of it, the sometimes yearning for certain things. Perhaps it's a triggering time of year, and not in a good way. And so, just having, again, some strategies to be with yourself. That's what I'm going to be bringing forward. And so I'm doing it from the perspective or lens of mindfulness. And so I looked into a Buddhist monk that I really admire, Thich Nhat Hanh. And so he has a book called actually True Love. And a lot of this book is about navigating emotions, but being with the self as well. And so maybe I'll start with the first one, if that's okay with you, Susan.
Yeah, maybe explain the holiday blues, how they show up. And because I don't know if everybody maybe is aware enough to realize that what they're feeling is maybe the blues or sadness, whether it's like from the weather or some of those other things. And then, then we'll dive into the strategies.
So the blues, again, for everybody, they may show up differently, whether that's an over kind of energized approach to what you're doing and just trying to, again, tackle everything at once, but perhaps that's not your norm. Or perhaps you're so overwhelmed that it's very difficult to even get out of bed. And just not being able to find joy in the things that you think you should find joy in. Perhaps, cognitively, that this is, a good time of year, this should be fun and being together with family and so on. But you just can't find it within yourself to feel that emotion. And so I think, again, it's just having that assessment of yourself to be able to approach yourself with that curiosity and to say, is this my normal? Is this my baseline? Is this what I want to be feeling? And just, you don't have to know the answer. You just have to explore and perhaps open up and to ask yourself some maybe clarifying questions around, what is it that you want? What do you want to feel? Again, is this your normal? Is this your baseline energy level? And then if it just doesn't feel that it is, and if, some kind of, if things aren't necessarily aligning for you, perhaps you do feel that, this is the holiday blues, and this is something that I really should pay more attention to in terms of, taking care of myself and being able to get through this in a way that doesn't cause any suffering.
That is a great way to describe it. It's like something's just off. And sometimes it's stronger, sometimes it's not as strong. But no, I appreciate that, because as I said, I don't think many people bring attention to that and just kind of muster through it versus maybe taking care of yourself. So you've got 6 tips for us, and I'm very excited to dive into this. So let's start with tip number 1.
All right. So this is, again, just, perhaps it goes contrary to what we're used to in terms of the holiday, but this is really just trying to turn inward and perhaps trying, one's best to slow down a little. So the first one I called being there. And so being there is bringing your true presence, but this takes practice. When we understand the importance of how we truly can be with ourselves, it empowers us to also show up for others as well. The most precious gift we can give to ourselves is the ability to be with ourselves. And this can be attained through mindfulness practices. A very simple mindfulness exercise could be your mindful breathing. So for example, just sitting and, catching yourself. Perhaps you're short of breath because, it's just been so busy. There's been so many duties and tasks to do. And just calming yourself and sitting and breathing. And as you breathe in, say, breathing in, I know that I am breathing in. Breathing out, I know that I am breathing out. And just doing this for a few minutes, just to catch yourself. And this practice is to bring the mind and the body together and to leave behind the regrets of the past, our preoccupations, our angers, our jealousies, our sadnesses. And when you pursue this mindful breathing, your mind and body begin to come together in the present moment. And this is something even small children are capable of. So again, just sitting with yourself and just noticing the breath. I know that in our culture that seems quite difficult and not necessarily part of our daily habits, but it is a way, again, to just catch yourself, to bring you back into the moment, to bring you back to yourself.
I find that tip very interesting, and I was thinking about this, and I'm sure there's a difference between being there and being, I guess, with yourself, and also like being alone by yourself. Like, part of me feels like, how does this work for someone who is neurodivergent or ADHD? And it's like, I got to be busy or like around people. And how do you just slow down to like be there and be present with yourself? And I was thinking like, oh, some people might think that they have to be by themselves, secluded in their bedroom, to slow down and do this breathing. But I think I can say like I've done this in a busy shopping mall, or like when I'm around people, is just slow down, even just close your eyes, take that deep breath in, exhale, and feel what's going on through your body. And I think it's a hard practice if you are not comfortable, I guess, being there and being present with yourself. But I think it brings down that stress in many different situations if we just, I guess, take that mindful moment. That's kind of what you're getting at?
Yeah, and that's a really good point, is that, sometimes it is really hard to just be alone. And so having this practice is something that's always available to you anywhere. People don't even need to know that you're doing it. Walking, for example, and just noticing how you're breathing as you're walking. Perhaps, again, in terms of neurodivergence, it could just be something to add on. That's, again, like some source of distraction that feels good on top of something else you're already doing. Perhaps if you have some anxieties about, being in malls or being around a lot of people and homes and all these gatherings now, just being able to, perhaps turn away from that a little bit and towards yourself and just to kind of center. But again, you can be anywhere and nobody has to know you're doing it. And this is something that's always available to you.
Well, I I think that's a great tip and a hard one to start practicing right off. But once you do it, I think it can become very automatic.
Yeah, and there'll be a bit more guidance in terms of, how many minutes or how often should one do it. So, but yeah, it is hard to start new routines for sure.
Yeah, even just a quick like awareness and then acknowledge and then moving on and build the time a little bit longer.
That's all you need.
Yeah. Okay. Moving on. Number two.
So I wanted to just, take a look at how do we overcome our suffering? How do we get past perhaps what's holding us back? So again, whether that's, feeling sad throughout the holidays, whether it's, it's a time of year that's really triggering, whether it's, again, being around a lot of people isn't very fun, whether it's maybe perhaps you don't have a lot of people to be around, whatever that might be. So again, mantras can be a very important and incredibly effective tool to bring into one's daily practices. And so perhaps you already have, and the impression that someone close to you is already suffering. So this is looking at someone else first, and again, being able to apply this to oneself. But when you're mindful of perhaps someone else within your realm who is suffering, you're more likely to have the capacity to notice your own suffering. And vice versa. Perhaps if you are suffering yourself, you're more in tune or attuned to noticing other people's suffering. And so a mantra that one might be able to use at this time is to speak, of course, with gentleness and of course with compassion. And again, whether this is inward or outward, it could be something like, "Dear one, I know that you are suffering, and that is why I am here for you." And so we can offer this to ourselves. We can offer these different parts of ourselves, our own words, our own gifts in that kind of way, but again, extending that to others. And when we suffer, we have a strong need for the people we love. So sometimes, again, who is it that we can call on to bring into our lives or even that moment to be with? And if we are ignored, we suffer more. So you can offer your love if this is the case. And your presence and your understanding is a blessing. And with this, your offering of love is a miracle. Again, whether to yourself or whether to others. Sincerely try to be there for yourself, for your life, and for the people that you love. Try to extend yourself to those you love who are suffering as well. And your presence is precious. And this is the practice of true love. Mm-hmm. And so again, just, sometimes we either might get caught up with things or we might feel very negatively about things. And it is the way that we speak to ourselves. It is the way that we hold ourselves with tenderness. We hold ourselves with compassion to be able to overcome the deep pain that might cause. And so again, if you are feeling that, this is a very triggering time of year, perhaps things aren't going your way, perhaps there's some loss, there's some grieving that is coinciding with this time of year. Again, just being able to speak gently to yourself, perhaps developing your own mantra. You're welcome to borrow this one, but also developing your own that better aligns perhaps with your situation and with what you need to hear at this time. And just being and offering those kind words to yourself, just as you would to someone else that you see who might be suffering.
That topic reminds me a lot of the practice of self-compassion and in bringing that self-compassion. And I feel like the two tie together. Like my self-compassion practice is repeating mantras to myself, right? Like it's, well, of course you feel sad that, your kiddos don't have their grandparents here, have that relationship. Like it makes sense that you're sad. And I think even just bringing that like to the forefront and saying it, it's like, there, dear, like it makes sense. And even though others may not understand, if we're talking to ourselves in that kind of way, I think it brings down maybe those feelings and puts them more into perspective. So I'm a big supporter of mantras in that internalized self-talk that we can show ourselves some compassion and understanding for maybe why we're sad or acknowledging sadness and not necessarily having to fix it, just sit with it.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. Thanks, Susan. Which brings us, go ahead.
Yeah. Tip number 3.
Tip number 3, and just being with that, and perhaps part of looking inward is what leads us to our next point, which is deep listening. And so how do we really perhaps get to the root of what we are feeling? How do we know, is it the blues? How do we know, is it just maybe some anger or jealousy or, something else that's triggering us? And so what happens when there's too much suffering, stress or sadness, when the joy of happiness has disappeared? What we say sticks with those we love. It is like a bomb waiting to explode. Anger can be triggered so quickly, and escaping them makes the other feel abandoned, and their suffering therefore then increases. You're no longer able to peacefully speak, and the listening is lost. However, listening is profoundly important. It is a meditation in itself. The ability to mindfully breathe can cultivate a commitment to showing compassion within yourself and offering deep listening to your loved one. So in terms of therapists can demonstrate active listening. Active listening. And your therapist should embody and demonstrate this listening. And hopefully, again, if this is an issue for you that extends beyond perhaps what you might think your own capacity is to offer this to yourself, whether that be our services or whether that be a family member or a friend that you can reach out to just practice, not only offering that, but also receiving that, and just exploring those parts of ourselves that we can truly feel heard and navigate and achieve that level of understanding that's needed for us. That can ease our suffering. And so again, we can deeply listen, and it might not be easy for everyone. And again, there's no judgment if one isn't skilled or tasked at deep listening. But we need to train in this to the best of our abilities, and to be able to, again, listen with calm and understanding in order to relieve our own pain or the pain of others. So again, an exercise to practice is when you are listening, do not say anything when someone else is talking. It might be easy, you might know what they're saying, you might want to finish their sentences, you might get excited and jump in, but just maybe commit to yourself and just to not talk when someone else is speaking. And then just notice what happens. Again, just to be able to breathe deeply with an open heart and to really listen. And this is the most precious gift that you can offer either yourself or the person or people that you love.
Mm-hmm. So just to clarify, deep listening is like deep listening to others speak, or are we deep listening to what we're saying to ourselves, or is it both?
Good question. Both. And so it depends on your own need. Perhaps you are feeling that this is something you don't want to share with people, but this is something that is eating at you, something that is, really affecting you in a negative way. And you just don't know, why does that have so much power? And perhaps, again, just whether it's sitting with yourself, maybe you're walking, maybe you're even in a mall, but you're just coming back into yourself and paying attention to, the root of this. What was the perhaps trigger? What was the catalyst that brought up the sadness? What was it that day? Was it that you wanted to get a certain present and it wasn't available anymore? Now, a child or a family member is going to be devastated that they're not getting a present, and so on. But again, what is it that, on a deeper level, that you need to feel better, to feel successful, to feel like you can move on from that experience? And so whether it's, again, questioning yourself with, again, openness, non-judgment, or again, offering that to another person.
Mm-hmm. I think I have to journal to listen sometimes. Mm-hmm. I have to maybe write things down, and then reflect when I read back, and I'm able to connect the dots as my form of deep listening by, I guess, the way I manage things. So it's like hearing, seeing, and feeling, and then writing it down. But I think those are very important concepts, because if we're not listening, we're just kind of letting everything, our emotions, our feelings, our thoughts, kind of pass us by. So I think that's a great tip. Number 5. No, number 4.
Four?
Number 4. Yeah.
So, and perhaps again, with the, emerging of some sadness, or again, the triggers that come, we've tried, mantras to ourselves, we've tried listening, deeply to ourselves, but we find ourselves still perhaps, just unsettled, or again, perhaps sad. And so restoring peace within yourself is our next strategy. And so you can walk your way to peace, walking mindfully. So perhaps let's say this is a mall at this time of year. Paying attention to one step in front of the other, realizing what is beautiful around you. In the moment, being able to touch, that is a way to bring joy back to yourself. And think of it as a way to untie the knots within yourself, transforming energies that are harmful to the peace of your mind and body. You are a priority. Your ability to love or care for others is based on your ability to care for yourself. And we must come back to ourselves to restore our peace. And when this occurs, helping or being available to others will be actually much easier. And this is the basic condition for supporting others, so that the stress is diminished. And this can occur anywhere. So whether it be in a mall, whether it's in a garden, your kitchen, when you're driving, talking on the phone, etc. And so again, just finding that peace, restoring yourself, so then you can be there for others as well.
Is it possible, like when you say like walk your way to peace, I feel like I notice this more so when I'm stretching.
Ooh.
Like when I'm trying to restore a peace within my body, maybe because it's so chaotic. I find that kind of restorative peace happens when I'm lengthening my muscles or stretching and taking care of myself. Does that kind of tie in with what you're talking about?
Absolutely. That's a great idea in terms of just staying, physical, but paying attention to your body. And so I would say that again, whatever it takes for you to just acknowledge that, I'm out of alignment with myself, I'm missing something, and again, we get so caught up in, as a mother, particularly with kids, but with anybody, that you can just kind of be on this kind of hamster wheel and trying to do everything and be, multitasking and so on. And so, just again, whether it's stretching, whether that's your breathing, whether that's your mantra, whether that's your journaling, whether that's your walking, but just having some conversation, having some self-talk, having some check-ins, having some questioning, again, curiously, non-judgmentally, of where is this coming from? I want to be able to be strong and whole, so I can embody to my family that I am present for them.
Excellent. Okay, number 5.
Okay, and so again, just very similarly to navigating and trying to overcome that suffering, is caring for our pain. So I found this really interesting to look at it kind of like in therapy, we would call it like parts work, different parts of ourselves that are showing up. And, some of them might be new, some of them might be, quite familiar. But what do we do with that when these different parts, again, perhaps anger, jealousy, and so on, sadness, when they strike? So whenever there is an energy of feeling to be transformed like sadness, it is important to do something to care for this energy if you do not want the energy to destroy you. So if you can hold on to mindfulness for about 5 or 10 minutes, you will begin to feel relief. And think about it like a mother caring for her crying baby. She stops whatever she's doing and she picks up the baby in her arms. And the baby immediately feels a sense of relief. And despite the mother not knowing the reason for the baby's crying, the fact that the mother is offering the energy of tenderness while deeply looking for a solution is helping the baby. And we can find the same is true in meditation. When you have pain within you, the first thing to do is to bring mindfulness to that pain. You may say something to yourself such as, I know you are there, sadness. Breathe. I'm taking care of you. And then wait about 3 to 4 minutes at first and just notice what's happening. What is coming up? And perhaps saying again, breathing in, I know that I am sad. Breathing out, I know that the sadness is not me. This way, you can look deeply at the true source of your sadness. And if you can make it up to 10 minutes, you will likely feel better. And this discovery of what is at the root will liberate you from your pain and sadness.
Well, I know when we first hopped on the call and we were talking about this, we talked about this tip, caring for pain. I was like, yeah, I'm just going to keep myself distracted. I don't think I'm going to do that. But the way, just to be honest, right? Because not everybody might be in a place where they're ready or wanting to. And I was like, yeah, I'll just distract myself. But the way you explained it, I'm like, I can do that. I can do that. So thank you for that. I think it is possible to acknowledge that it's there and hold space for it and realize that it isn't me, that it's the pain and bringing it up. So I think that is a lot more doable than I anticipated when we talked about it on a bigger spectrum. So
yeah, and I think thank you for being open to that. And I think that our shame can really come up when we feel like we're not supposed to be sad, when we're supposed to feel happy. Yeah. The guilt of not being on, the guilt of not feeling able to perform, can be overwhelming in itself. And so I think to just notice it again and to cradle this like you would a baby, and that it's a part of something that's showing up. It isn't you. It's part of again, one's experience, or there is no judgment, there is no shame to be held for that, and just again being able to breathe your way through that and to cradle it and to soothe that. Perhaps you don't have a solution right away, but the presence of your attention to it will definitely be helpful.
Yeah. Oh, I think it sounds a lot more doable than maybe the way I thought about it. So I appreciate that. So let's wrap it up with your last tip on how to manage the holiday sadness or the holiday blues.
Okay. And so, perhaps this can be pre-actual Christmas Day or post, and, finding that there's been lots of emotional waves, there's been lots of busyness, there's been lots of, obligations and so on. And we're just depleted and we're exhausted. And, we still feel, of course, that we have to carry on with life. And so how do we come to life again? How do we find ourselves within this, chaos, within the obligations, within the busyness? But if we are not mindful during this time, we are not fully living. And mindfulness is what brings the body and the mind back to the present moment. We may get lost in our emotions, our sadness, for example, and we may find ourselves dwelling on the past over things beyond our control. Not forcing, but gently bringing the awareness back to the present moment brings us back to life. So Albert Camus says that there are thousands of people moving about around us carrying their own corpses. Yet if we practice mindfulness, we come back to life again immediately. You can practice this in a meditation by saying, breathe, you are alive. And without mindfulness, we sacrifice the present moment. 1 week of practice is enough to create good habits. Carving out time to nourish yourself with mindfulness will invite a sense of freedom from the thoughts, the bad habits, etc., that can often rule over us. It is important to organize your day in order to make meditation or some space to hold space for yourself, but every single day. And I would invite people to perhaps start with 2 minutes and see if you can increase that to 10. But if you can, again, just notice that you are alive, if you can breathe and tell yourself that you are alive, that will bring you back to life immediately.
I think that's a great tip. And just on a personal note, the carving out time piece is important. And personally, what I've learned to do is carve out that time before I have to show up around others, if that makes sense. So if I'm getting ready to go to a Christmas dinner or a holiday event, I'll probably I'll leave 15 or 20 minutes to just check in, grab myself, kind of prepare mentally, bring some mindfulness in, and almost help myself transition too. But I find like if I don't, then it's just like go, go, go. And then suddenly I'm like, why do I feel so distressed? And then if I'm not managing those other emotions, it can kind of spiral. But I mean, that's what works for me. I think that making sure that we check in with ourselves daily is important. It's not always, something we think of doing, but forming that routine might be a great thing to think about for what you want to do in the new year. But trying to bring that mindfulness in throughout the holiday season will really help you. And I appreciate you sharing that, and just it's a good reminder.
Yeah, and I think that again, I just want to validate people who might be experiencing again sadness or a sense of loss or stress or struggles over the holidays, and to know that you're not alone. To know that there are, again, whether that be these or other practical strategies for getting through the holidays. Believing that you deserve the care, believing that you deserve the attention and the love. Holding space for yourself, being able then therefore to hold space for other people. And that it's not easy sometimes, but it's well worth it.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Kristy, for this, what feels like a therapy session.
Good.
It's a great chat, and so many important aspects to focus on when it comes to dealing with sadness over the holiday season. And I think that if you're struggling and you need to reach out, we are working quite a bit over the holidays, so feel free to reach out to us. I'll have the contact information sent out. But we appreciate your input today, Kristy, and thank you everybody for listening to today's workshop. And I hope that you're able to implement some of the strategies. Until tomorrow, bye-bye.
Bye, Susan. Thanks.